Hi, everybody, and welcome to Simply Cards by Kathi. I'm Kathi Ondas, and today is an added video. It is Saturday, October 25th, 2025, and this is the third video this week showing Thanksgiving cards. I had asked on my Facebook page last week what was what would they like to see next, and overwhelmingly it was Thanksgiving cards. So I've done one so far where we used alcohol markers to color. The second one was last evening where we used all die cuts using Spellbinder's Acorn Acres. And today I'm going to use a stamp set and die from Gina K Designs, and we are going to watercolor. Now, this stamp set can be used with any medium. You can use your watercolor markers if you have them. I'm going to be using my ink pads with water to actually color. So we're going to kind of flip this down and get started. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so happy you found me. I hope you'll like what you see and come back. And if you are with me live or catching the replay, thank you for taking time out of your day to be with me. I know time is precious, and I really appreciate that you've spent some time with me for crafting. So let's flip this down. And we're going to get started. Now the stamp set I'm using is small, but it's powerful. You can get some really beautiful images. This is called Harvest of Love, and you can see it has a large stamp, and it does have matching dies, and the dies cut out each of the words so that they do. This is the greeting we'll be using, and it did have a matching die, and it has a large die for this pumpkin. So I'm going to set this off to the side, and we're going to get started with our watercoloring. Now I chose a different color for my card base. And I'm going to be using a deep plum color. I wanted something a little bit different than golds, oranges, or greens. So we'll play with that when we're done here. Now I'm using a watercolor paper, and you can get this anywhere. Ulta News, Simon Says Stamps, stamps.com. You can pick it up at your local Michael's or Hobby Lobby. And I am going to use my stamping tool so that I get a nice crisp image. Now I'm using Ulta News Obsidian Pigment ink. This is a very crisp ink, and it is good for watercoloring, and it gives a nice sharp stamped image. And let's go ahead and just... Now, when I'm working with photopolymer stamps in a stamping tool, I put a nice even light pressure, but I don't press hard. If you press hard, you can distort your image, and I would much rather go back and stamp a second or third time and get a nice sharp image for me to color and work with. So let's go ahead. I'm going to stamp this one more time. Let's re-ink this. If you're with me live, leave me a comment. Let me know where you're from. I love knowing where my those viewing or watching are from. Now I'm going to bring in my Chucky tool, and this just gives it a little bit more even pressure, I think, than my fingers do. And this should be good. That's a good image. All right. Now, the one thing about using a pigment ink, it doesn't clean off well always or never actually, I've found with water. I do have to use like a solvent cleaner. So just know that. Now I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and while that's drying, I'm going to bring in my card base. I'm using an 8.5 by 5.5, and it's scored at 4.25. And I'm going to go ahead and burnish that while that's drying. And then I decided to use a white layer. I did emboss it. And I embossed it with Alta News organic linen. And if you can see that, it actually looks almost like a linen fabric. I wanted something that, because I have a background, and you'll see as we go further, I wanted something that wasn't going to compete with my image. I just wanted to give it a little bit of dimension and some texture, but I truly want my image to be the focal point. So we're going to go ahead and adhere this down, and then we should be ready to start watercoloring. Now this is a 4 by 5.25, and I cut this using my A2 dies from Waffle Flower, my rectangular A2 dies. You can just use a 4 by 5.25. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We have from West Michigan and from Arkansas. Thank you. All right, so we're ready to go. So let's move this out of the way, and let me show you what I'm going to use. I'm using Gina K's inks, and I am using the ink pads. And I have here, let's make sure, Tangerine Twist, Tomato Soup, and Faded Brick. I'm going to use those colors for my pumpkins. Now I do have some water brushes, watercolor brushes. These are Alta News. And I also have just some plain brushes with a little bit of water here in a palette. And I kind of go back and forth. I'm not a great artist by any means. I just love to color. And I like to use a variety of mediums. So I'm going to start off with my faded brick. And one of the things you can do is I take an acrylic block. Let's move that out of the way. And I just pick up some ink with my block. And then I'm going to add water to it. So that's one way. You can also use your re-inkers. Drop a drop of ink on there and add water to it. So there's a variety of ways you can do that. Now I'm just going to bring this in and squeeze a little bit of water out. And then just mix it up. I want it pretty dilute. I don't want it to look like I'm just using ink. That might be more than I wanted. And then I'm going to come in with my other brush, and I am going to bring this in because I want to make sure, and I'm going to wet down my paper a little bit because I want that color to move. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of it. And this is, I just don't want it to, there we go. These brushes are kind of leaking here a little bit. Looks like I unscrewed it. There we go. And I'm going to add just a little bit of color down in here. And I'm going to let it spread. And I want to take some of this off here. And pick up more and just drop it down and let it spread. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this water off because that was quite a lot that came out. And I'm going to add a little bit more ink. And I'm going to come in with my smaller brushes and then just go ahead and add right around the edge. And you can see, because I wet the cardstock, this is going to go ahead and kind of work its way up because the water wicks it up. Now I'm going to add a little bit here up at the top, and I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. And my goal is for the colors to blend. I want these to blend as they get added. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and just clean my brush off. I'm going to set this off to the side because I'm going to add it on another pumpkin, but I want to do one at a time and get these to mix. So I'm going to come in here and add some more water. I actually think I like these better, but it's also that I need to work on using the other ones. And I'm just going to come in here, and you can see I'm just adding some color, and it's blending in. Let's add just a little bit of water here, and then come back in with some color and just add it. And that water just carries your color with you. Okay. And then let's ink up with Tangerine Twist. Now you could certainly use one or two colors. I'm going to move these out of the way, but I really like the look of the colors blending. And then I'm just going to come in here and go ahead and add a little bit more. And I am overlapping a little bit. And I'm going to let that dry. Now, you can dry that with your heat tool, which I'm going to bring out. And I'm putting it on low. I'm sorry for the noise. And I'm just going to hit it a little bit from both back and front, just to help it dry a little bit. Now let's go ahead and do another one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to add my water and spread it around. It shouldn't be soaking wet, but it should have enough that you're going to be able to get that ink moving. And again, I'm going to start up at the top with the darkest and just kind of dab it lightly. And you can see how it spreads. I'm going to come in with my tomato soup and just add a little bit in here. So what you're doing is just really, it's almost a little bit like blending your alcohol markers, but using water as your medium to kind of help with that. And I do love to play with color. It may not always look perfect, and like I said, I'm not an artist, but it's truly, for me, relaxing, and it's mine. It doesn't have to be perfect. So there's our second pumpkin, and let's do the third. So you can see it doesn't take long to do this. Again, starting with the darkest color at the top, and we'll add some at the bottom. Come in with a little bit of water here. Now, if you get too much water on, just dab it with a paper towel, which I'm going to grab a tissue here. And then you can go ahead and just continue to add your color. If your color starts to thicken up because the water, you have less water on it, just add a little bit more. And I actually wanted these to look painted or watercolored, not looking for anything special. Now I'm going to turn this around because I'm going to go up at the bottom with my darkest color again, because you would have a shadow there, and just kind of gently spread it up so that my colors blend. And here's our pumpkins. Now I'm going to let that dry while we do the leaves. And we can always go back in and add a little more color once it dries. So with these, I'm just going to move them off to the side so that I don't get my hands in them. And we're going to work on the leaves. So for the leaves, I have grass green and fresh asparagus, and we're going to use the blocks the same way. So let me bring in two. My lighter color green is going to be towards the ends, which is the grass green. And then my darker green, which is fresh asparagus, I'm going to use towards the base of the leaves. Okay, so let's add a little bit of water here. And this time I'm going to use this to do it. If you have questions, oh, Emily from Minnesota, thank you for joining. So I'm going to wet my leaves, and I do have some fresh, clean water here, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of water to them just to get the paper wet so my ink spreads. And you can see how well the obsidian black ink has held up using the water colors. So let's come in with our light, and I'm going to start at the top here and work down. And just adding a little bit, and it kind of pools and goes down on its own. And I'm going to do that for all the leaves. Okay, let's add a little bit water here. Now we even have some berries here, and I actually forgot to pull the color ink for that. So when we get to those, I'm just going to reach over, and we're going to go with like the same color as our card base, a plum color. Let's go ahead and add here. Drop me a comment. Do you like watercoloring, or have you tried it before? And if you do, what's your best way that you like watercoloring? Because you know we have watercolors in like tins. Let's go ahead in with a little bit of the dark here. You can use your inks. There are watercolor pencils that you can color with and then add your water to spread your color. And I'm just going to add a little bit of dark on each of these leaves. Let's go in here. Hi Denise, thanks for joining. So when I'm adding my darker color, or you can even start with the dark and then go light, I'm just adding little bits of it to give it some dimension. I leave the lightest color, as you can see, towards the edges, almost very faint so you can't see it as well, because I like that look of it being, I don't know, a little bit of light color there, like the light's hitting it. So let's go in here and then come in with our dark and add just a little bit in there. So fine lines, when you get to fine lines like this, I do like to use a smaller brush. Let's go here. And you can see that it's so thinned out that I can just paint each leaf the way it is, and then just add some of the dark up the center. And the water just, again, carries it through. All right, I think, oh, we missed 2 leaves here. Let's get one here. I always miss one. And then I think the rest, here's one, are berries. All right, so I'm going to clean my brush off. Okay, and I'm going to move these out of my way, and I'm going to grab plum and yellow for the lily. So right in here, we have a lily, and then these little pods, I'm going to do those in plum, and the lily in a yellow. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of ink here on the corner, because I'm not going to need much at all, because these little berries are quite small. And just thin this out. I'm going to come in here with my berries, and because they're so, add a little bit more water here, so tiny, I'm just going to start at the bottom and let the ink paint, I guess it's ink, isn't it, I'm using, kind of move up. Because this is watered down so much, I don't really have to add anything on the paper, but I am going to come in with a little bit of the darker ink right here at the bottom, just to add some dimension to those berries. All right, now let's do our lily. For the lily, I'm going to use what's called butterscotch. That's another one of Gina K's. And just add. And I want that lily to be a little bit bold. So let's see if we can get that here. So I'm going to go ahead and add my color. And then I'm going to come back in with a little bit bolder ink that I did not water down, that's here on the edge. And let's just add that right in here. Okay. And the last part is our stems. And as I'm looking at this, I see I did forget one of the leaves up right by the pumpkin. Or maybe it's part of the pumpkin. It is. So let's just pick up a little bit of ink and fill that in right here. All right. Now we're going to use a brown for the stems. And the color's a craft ink. And for this, I'm just going to take a touch, because we're barely going to use any, and water that down. And we're just going to add it to here. The stems are very very thin. Let's add just a little bit more. That you can barely see them. Let's come in here and make this a little bolder. All right. Now you can come back in. My pumpkins are dry, and you can add a little bit more color if you'd want to. And I am going to come in with just a little bit of the tangerine and add a little bit up in here. Just to make it a little bit bolder. And then we're going to dry this with our heat tool and die cut this out. Now, you do want your inks to dry before adding a little bit more color, because otherwise your paper can get too wet and pill. But here is our pumpkins that we're going to use on our card. So bear with me a minute while I cover these up, because otherwise they're going to be all over, and I know this will get ruined. So let's move these out of the way. All right. So let's hit this very lightly. And if you're using a heat tool, you want to use it on the lowest setting. You can let this air dry. And I hold it about 6 inches away from my paper. And I do hit it from the back and the front. That helps to prevent the warping a little bit. And that's good. So remember I said we were going to die cut this out, and this has a die to it. And then we're going to put our card together. So this is our die, and I'm just going to adhere it with a little bit of low tack tape and run it through my die cutting machine right behind me. And then we're going to put our card together. So let's see. Denise, thank you, Denise. I'm glad that you like the colors. I love plum for fall, and I think it's a color we often forget to use. Let me run this right through the machine. You're going to hear some noise for a second. There we go. I'm sorry about that. Since my shoulder surgery, I still can't use a crank die cutter, so I have to use the electric one for a while yet. And you can see here's our pumpkins. So that's going to be the focal point of our card. So now let's put our card together. So we have the card base with the white embossed layer, and I wanted to bring some attention to this focal point. So I used one of Gina K's design layouts, and these are new to me. Everything I'm using is new to me. So it's Master Layouts 18. Now, I am not affiliated with any products, so I'm using what I truly like and love and just sharing that with you. This cuts a frame, and when you cut it, it cuts two pieces, the inside and the frame. I'm just going to use the frame, and what I did with that is I cut 3 and glued them together already because I want my frame to stand up a little bit. But I'm also trying to keep from adding as much bulk as I can to the card. So I'm just going to glue this down, and that'll dry pretty quickly, and we'll have our frame for this card. There we go. Now I cut a back, and I cut this with a die from this layout. It does cut a piece that's a little bit bigger than this center piece that cuts out, that'll actually adhere to the back of the die for a background. And I thought, let me see, this would be pretty if I love this gingham, and this is a pattern paper also from Gina K that I've been using quite a bit of. I thought it would be pretty to have my pumpkins on that background, but I wasn't sure, so let's see what you think. Should we go with the gingham paper or go without? Put a note in the comment if you like the paper or you would like it without the paper. And I'll wait just a second to see if anybody responds. I hope someone will. And then we'll finish this up. No responses. So, all right, let's go with the paper then. I'm just going to add a little line of glue along here. And then we're going to put that panel down, that gingham panel, to adhere to the back of this. I need to push that up just a little bit. Let's make sure that we are covered on the other side. Not quite. And it would help if I did it straight. There we go. We'll give it a good press there for a minute and let that dry. Now I'm going to use my glue, and I'm going to glue this whole panel. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of Scotch tape, which I often do when I'm adding a panel like this, just so it holds in place. And no one ever sees that tape. And then you can kind of rest assured it's not going to go anywhere. All right, now we can glue that down. So I'm just going to add all the way around the frame because I want my frame to sit. I want it to adhere well. And then I'm also going to add some across the back. Let's add this right about there. And I am going to set a block on this so that it is stuck there. Now I could go ahead and just adhere this down, but what I think I'd like to do is pop it up a little bit. The embossing folder I'm using is Alta News. Hold on, it's burlap. Let me grab it here. It is Alta News burlap. And I have so much here on my desk that I'm working on that I can't really, it's under everything. So I will find it, and it will definitely put the name of it in my blog post for you. And there will be a tutorial for this that I will have all of the supplies and all the measurements for you. So I'm going to grab my scissors, and we're going to add a little bit of foam to this. And I'm just using foam tape, and I'm going to go across the back. And then just trim. Now you can use foam pads, foam squares, Stampin' Dimensionals, whatever you have. I find that I have less mess, especially with the pups, using the tape because I don't have the little backs all over the place. And we're just going to add this here. Now, another thing you could do with this is you could cut this same die, just like I did the frame, and adhere them one on top of the other so that you have a flat surface. That would be another way to do this. I'm going to cut that in half. And then I'm going to use this little piece that I have. One there. I want to make sure that that little tendril to the pumpkin leaves doesn't get all bent. All right, let's peel these off. And we're going to adhere this. Denise, I'll make sure that you have the name of the folder. It's here in the midst of all these acrylic blocks. It's called, I found it, the Organic Linen 3D Embossing Folder, and it is by Altenew. Okay, let's go ahead and center this. And then I have my greeting that I actually like it to be coming across. And we could put it here, but I think I'm going to go towards the bottom so that it's across the bottom of the pumpkin in the very corner of this frame. So with that said, because these are raised up, but this frame isn't as high as that pumpkin, I'm going to need to put just a little piece of foam on there. And then we'll be able to glue the Thanksgiving down, except for a little piece right here. So it's like a puzzle. You're always kind of fitting things together. But it's a fun and relaxing puzzle. Let's do that here. Take the release tape off, and I'm going to add just a little bit of glue here. So let's add that. There we go. Now for the inside, I had cut an A2. This is for, oh, see the ink. I'll have to fix this, but this will be, this is 4 by 5 1/4. I put a piece of that gingham, just like we have here on the front, and then that'll add to the inside. But since I got ink on it, I'll have to redo that. And then you can add a few little gems if you want to. I have some, just some rhinestones here. And I also have some orange, these are Pink and Main's sticky gems. And I'm not sure if that's what I want to add to this or not. Let's see. I might want to go with something a little darker. So I'll add those and they'll be in the post. So here's our finished card with watercoloring. And you can hopefully see the variation in the color. Let me bring you back to me. I hope you enjoyed today's video. It is the third of 3 Thanksgiving card ideas. And probably next week I'm going to go on and do some Christmas. But I hope you'll give these ideas some thought, give them a try. If you do, I'd love to see what you make. Feel free to post it on my Facebook page and share it with everybody. I truly believe stamping or card making is a way to connect with people. And I think when we share, we also inspire others to do that. So I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy it. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe and well. And I'll see you Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock. Bye, everybody.